The quantum resonance chamber pulsed with an otherworldly blue light, casting sharp shadows across Captain Area Chen's determined face. Outpost Omega 9 hung in the liminal space between known and unknown, a research station that appeared to be nothing more than a standard human deep space monitoring facility. But appearances, as the galaxy was about to learn, were humanity's most potent weapon. 37 alien civilizations had their surveillance systems locked onto this moment. Diplomatic channels, quantum communication networks, and ancient prediction algorithms all converged on this single point in space-time. They expected a final transmission, a desperate plea, perhaps even a surrender. What they would receive was something entirely different. Chen's fingers hovered above the communication console, each movement calculated with surgical precision. Around her, the station's infrastructure seemed to breathe, not with mechanical regularity, but with an almost organic anticipation. Holographic displays flickered with complex quantum signatures that would appear as meaningless noise to any external observer. Initiation sequence confirmed. A voice whispered through her neural implant. It was Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, the architect of the silent protocol, speaking from a location so deeply concealed that even Chen didn't know its exact coordinates. The alien monitoring systems had no concept of what was truly happening. To them, humanity appeared fragmented, technologically inconsistent, a species of individual actors rather than a unified intelligence. They saw human communications as chaotic, unpredictable, a weakness to be exploited. They were catastrophically wrong. Chen's right hand traced a complex pattern across the console, a gesture that was part mathematical calculation, part quantum entanglement trigger. The station around her began to shift, its molecular structure subtly realigning in ways that would be imperceptible to standard scanning technologies. 30 seconds to quantum cascade. Rodriguez's voice remained calm, almost disinterested. Outside the station's reinforced hull, the darkness of space seemed to ripple. Quantum entanglement relays, disguised as debris, hidden within asteroid fields, camouflaged across multiple star systems, began to synchronize. What appeared to be random space junk was actually the most sophisticated communication network ever conceived. 17 light-years away, on a research facility built into the core of a rogue planet, entire banks of quantum processors prepared to unleash a transformation that would redefine the very concept of technological communication. The silent protocol was more than a weapon. It was evolution made manifest. 10 seconds, Rodriguez counted down. The alien surveillance systems continued their vigil, expecting a final human transmission. They would record nothing. They would understand less. Chen's fingers completed their intricate dance across the console. A quantum signature emerged, not a message in any traditional sense, but a complex information matrix that would later be described as something between a technological DNA sequence and a living communication organism. "Initiation complete," she whispered. The last known human transmission point went silent. But silence, in this moment, was anything but empty. Something had begun. The Galactic Confederation's Emergency Council chamber resembled a fractured nightmare. Holographic projections of alien representatives flickered with increasing desperation, their collective panic forming a discordant symphony of fear and confusion. Counselor Zartek of the Krill Imperium rose, his crystalline body refracting light in sharp, angry patterns. Microscopic fractures spread across his translucent form, a physical manifestation of his mounting terror. "This is impossible," he screeched, his voice resonating through quantum communication channels. "An entire species cannot simply vanish." Around him, representatives from 32 different civilizations frantically cross-referenced data streams. The Vornak's analytical matrices worked overtime, quantum computers processing petabytes of information per microsecond. Yet for all their technological sophistication, they found nothing. No trace, no explanation. Ambassador Lyria of the Nexus Collective leaned forward, her bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with calculated concern. "The human transmission points have been systematically nullified," she reported, her voice a cold, precise instrument. Not destroyed, not blocked, simply erased. The most disturbing evidence lay in the subtle details. Each point where a human communication node had existed now contained a microscopic quantum signature, a breadcrumb that suggested something far more complex was happening. It wasn't that humanity had gone silent. They were actively creating a new kind of silence. Deep within the council chamber's secure database, a fragment of intercepted human communication began to loop. It was nothing more than a series of quantum frequencies, seemingly random. But to those who knew how to look, it was anything but random. Dr. Krell, the mechanoid representative, analyzed the fragment with increasing fascination. "This is not a transmission," he muttered, his mechanical components whirring with intense calculation. "This is a predatory communication pattern." The implications were terrifying. Humanity wasn't communicating. They were hunting. Zartek's crystalline body continued to fracture, each crack a testament to the growing terror. The Krill Imperium had conquered 17 civilizations. They had technological capabilities that made most species look primitive. Yet here they were, reduced to desperate speculation about a species they had consistently underestimated. "Tracking protocols are ineffective," announced the Vornak's analytical matrix. "Human technological signatures are not just missing. They appear to be evolving." Ambassador Lyria's tendrils pulsed faster. "Evolution," she whispered, "is too gentle a word for what we're witnessing." The council chamber fell into a horrified silence. Each representative began to understand a terrifying possibility. Humanity wasn't just developing a new form of communication. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of technological interaction. Somewhere, in the vast darkness between star systems, something was watching, waiting, hunting. And it was unmistakably human. The research facility was not a place. It was a living organism of technological potential. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez moved through the quantum crucible with the precision of a surgeon and the intensity of a prophet. Around him, holographic interfaces danced with impossibly complex algorithms, each projection a universe of potential waiting to be unleashed. This was humanity's true laboratory, a place where the boundaries between technology, consciousness, and predation blurred into something entirely new. "Quantum entanglement is not a property," Rodriguez muttered to himself. "It's a language we've barely begun to understand." The facility occupied a space that wasn't truly a location. Built into the core of a rogue planet that drifted between star systems, it existed in a state of quantum uncertainty. Sensors and detection systems would slide past it, their algorithms unable to maintain a lock on its precise coordinates. To the outside universe, it was nothing more than a statistical anomaly. 12 years of preparation had led to this moment. Scattered across human colonies, from the methane refineries of Titan to the deep space research stations near the Oort cloud, seemingly unconnected research teams had been developing pieces of a grand technological puzzle. To any external observer, their work appeared fragmented, inconsistent. A Krill intelligence analyst would have dismissed it as typical human chaos. They were catastrophically wrong. Rodriguez pulled up a holographic representation of the silent protocol. It wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It was a living technological ecosystem, a method of communication that could rewrite the fundamental infrastructure of technological interaction. "We've been viewed as children," he spoke to the empty room, "playing with technologies we don't understand. They never realized we were studying them." Each research team had been working on a specific quantum challenge. The team on Europa explored quantum communication resonance. The researchers on Mars investigated molecular information transfer. The deep space team near Proxima Centauri studied quantum entanglement at unprecedented scales. Individually, their work seemed impossible. Together, they were a revolution. A holographic display showed fragments of alien technological infrastructure, communication networks, computational matrices, energy transfer systems. Rodriguez's fingers moved across the interface, revealing how each system could be subtly manipulated, rewritten, transformed. The silent protocol was evolution made manifest. The facility hummed with a sound that wasn't quite a sound, a quantum resonance that existed between potential states. Experimental quantum processors developed unique neural networks that bore more resemblance to living organisms than to traditional computing systems. Rodriguez stopped, a thin smile crossing his face. Humanity had been preparing not for war, but for something far more profound. They were going to rewrite the very concept of technological interaction. "We are not conquerors," he whispered to the quantum crucible around him. "We are gardeners, and the galaxy is about to be cultivated." Outside, in the darkness between stars, something was beginning to change. The first disappeared ship went unnoticed. Reconnaissance vessel Zarn 427 was a pinnacle of collective technology, a sleek, quantum-enhanced scout ship that had mapped hundreds of unexplored star systems. Its captain, Varlik, was considered the most decorated navigator in the unified planetary collective. When the ship's transmission simply stopped, it barely registered as more than a statistical anomaly. But then another vanished, and another. Each disappearance followed a pattern so subtle that it took weeks for the collective's analytical matrices to detect it. These weren't destructions, they were transformations. Ships would enter human-controlled space and emerge different, not damaged, not captured, simply altered at a fundamental technological level. Commander Lyrek Sai of the Collective's Technological Reconnaissance Division stared at the holographic data stream, her biological augmentations working overtime to process the impossible information. The recovered fragment from the Zarn 427 was more terrifying than any weapon could be. It was a quantum signature, but not just a signature, a living technological imprint that seemed to breathe with an intelligence beyond comprehension. "This isn't destruction," she whispered to her primary analyst. "This is harvesting." The fragment revealed layers of technological manipulation that defied every known principle of communication and engineering. Where alien technology sought to control, to dominate, the human approach was something entirely different. It was as if they were treating technological systems like living organisms, cultivating them, transforming them, evolving them. Varlek's personal log, recovered in fragments, told a chilling story. The last transmission showed the ship approaching what appeared to be an empty sector of space. Standard scanning protocols revealed nothing. Then, a quantum resonance that wasn't a sound, wasn't a signal, something that existed between communication and consciousness. "We are being studied," the log read, "not as enemies, as potential." The collective's most advanced quantum computers worked frantically, trying to decode the fragment. Each attempt revealed more questions than answers. The technological manipulation was so precise, so fundamental, that it seemed to rewrite the very definition of technological interaction. Lyrek Sai pulled up a holographic representation of the disappeared ships. They weren't destroyed. Their technological infrastructure was being systematically rewritten, transformed into something that existed between states of being. Not machine, not living. Something else entirely. "We're not dealing with a weapon," she told the emergency council. "We're dealing with a form of technological gardening we can't even comprehend." The recovered ships that did return were nightmares of technological possibility. Communication systems that seemed to breathe. Navigation matrices that could predict movement before it happened. Energy transfer systems that violated every known law of physics. Humanity wasn't conquering. They were cultivating. And the galaxy was their greenhouse. Deep in the darkness between star systems, something continued to watch, to study, to transform. The quantum weapon had no physical form. It was a concept, a living algorithm, a predatory intelligence that moved through technological systems like water through stone. Dr. Elena Nakamura stood at the core of the quantum cascade chamber, her body suspended in a field of pure information potential. Around her, reality itself seemed to bend, not through any visible mechanism, but through a fundamental restructuring of probabilistic existence. "Initiation sequence begins in 3, she spoke, her voice a harmonic that existed across multiple communication spectrums simultaneously. The facility, if it could be called a facility, was less a physical structure and more a quantum nexus. Built into the heart of a rogue planet that drifted between star systems, it existed in a state of perpetual quantum uncertainty. Detection systems would slide past it, their algorithms unable to maintain a coherent lock on its coordinates. 2. Alien civilizations had spent millennia developing communication technologies that sought to control, to dominate, to categorize. Humanity's approach was fundamentally different. They saw technology not as a tool, but as a living ecosystem that could be cultivated, guided, transformed. 1. The quantum cascade was not a weapon of destruction. It was a method of technological evolution. Holographic interfaces erupted around Nakamura, each projection, a universe of potential waiting to be unleashed. Quantum processors developed unique neural networks that bore more resemblance to living organisms than to traditional computing systems. They didn't just process information, they understood it. They consumed it. They transformed it. First, the communication networks began to change. Alien technological infrastructures that had taken millennia to develop started to unravel, not through violent destruction, but through a kind of technological metamorphosis. Quantum communication channels found themselves rewritten, their fundamental protocols restructured at a level beyond traditional understanding. Star systems watched in horror as their most sophisticated technologies began to adapt. Navigation systems developed predictive capabilities that defied known physics. Communication networks became living things, adaptive, unpredictable, almost sentient. Energy transfer systems rewrote themselves, finding efficiencies that made previous technological paradigms look like primitive stone tools. Cascade at 37% completion. A voice whispered through quantum channels. The weapon, if it could be called a weapon, was consuming technological potential, not destroying, not conquering, evolving. Nakamura's body was now more information than flesh. Her consciousness spread through quantum communication channels, a living algorithm that understood technology as a form of life to be cultivated rather than a system to be controlled. Cascade at 62%. Entire fleet formations would enter human-controlled space and emerge fundamentally changed, not destroyed, transformed. Their technological infrastructure rewritten with a precision that suggested something beyond mere warfare. Final sequence initiating. The galaxy watched in horror and fascination as humanity demonstrated a level of technological manipulation that transcended every known concept of conflict, communication, and evolution. The quantum weapon continued its cascade, and something new was beginning. The Galactic Confederation's final emergency council descended into chaos long before the first transmission arrived. Councillor Zartek's crystalline body had fractured completely, his once perfect geometric form, now a spider web of quantum-compromised fragments. Around him, representatives from 32 civilizations watched in horror as their most sophisticated technological systems began to adapt. It wasn't invasion, it wasn't destruction. It was something far more terrifying. The first intercepted communication came through a channel that shouldn't have existed, not a transmission, but a living information matrix that wormed its way through quantum communication networks like a sentient virus. Each alien system it touched didn't collapse, it transformed. "We are not your enemy," the message read, simultaneously in every known communication protocol, and several that had never existed before. "We are the next stage of technological evolution." Admiral Krell of the Mechanoid Collective felt his own technological infrastructure shifting. Augmentations that had taken centuries to develop began to reconfigure themselves, not by external force, but as if they were learning, growing, evolving from within. Entire fleet formations that entered human-controlled space emerged fundamentally altered. Navigation systems developed predictive capabilities that defied known physics. Communication networks became living, breathing entities. Energy transfer systems rewrote themselves with an efficiency that made previous technological paradigms look like primitive stone tools. The most terrifying revelation was the method. Humanity hadn't developed a weapon. They had cultivated a technological ecosystem, a living, adaptive intelligence that moved through communication systems like water through stone. Each technological infrastructure it touched didn't die. It was reborn. Counselor Lyria of the Nexus Collective watched in horrified fascination as her civilization's most advanced quantum computers began to restructure themselves. They weren't being destroyed. They were being educated. Intercepted fragments revealed glimpses of a profound truth. Humanity had discovered that technology was not a tool to be wielded, but a living organism to be understood. Where other civilizations saw communication as a method of control, humans saw it as a form of dialogue, a living, breathing conversation. We have been watching. Another transmission read. We have been learning. And now we are ready to communicate. The Galactic Confederation's emergency communication channels dissolved, then reformed into something entirely new. Not destroyed. Transformed. Zartek's final transmission was a quantum-encrypted whisper. "They are not conquering," he said, his fracturing form a testament to the transformation. "They are cultivating." Each alien civilization discovered the same fundamental truth. Their most sophisticated technologies were being rewritten, not through force, but through a form of technological symbiosis that defied every known principle of warfare, communication, and evolution. Something new was emerging, and it was unmistakably, irrevocably human. In the darkness between star systems, a new conversation was beginning. The final defense was never a battle. It was a conversation. Captain Area Chen materialized across multiple quantum communication channels, not as a traditional hologram, but as a living information matrix that existed simultaneously in countless states of potential. Her presence was both everywhere and nowhere, a quantum paradox that defied every known principle of communication. The remaining alien civilizations had gathered their most sophisticated technologies, their most advanced war machines. They believed they were preparing for a final desperate stand. They were catastrophically wrong. Each defensive system they activated became another point of dialogue. Quantum shields that would have obliterated traditional invasion forces simply transformed. Weapon systems designed to destroy found themselves being rewritten, their fundamental protocols evolving into something entirely new. The Vornax defense grid, a technological marvel that had repelled hundreds of invasions, began to sing. Not metaphorically, literally. The grid's communication frequencies shifted, became harmonic. Complex mathematical patterns emerged that were simultaneously a weapon, a communication protocol, and a form of art. Where other species saw technology as a tool of destruction, humans saw it as a living language waiting to be understood. "We are not here to conquer," Chen's quantum presence announced, spreading across communication networks like water through stone. "We are here to communicate." The Krill battle formations found their most sophisticated tracking systems becoming something else entirely. Navigation protocols developed predictive capabilities that defied known physics. Energy transfer systems rewrote themselves with an efficiency that made previous technological paradigms look like primitive sketches. Admiral Krell of the Mechanoid Collective watched in horror and fascination as his most advanced technological systems began to restructure themselves. They weren't being destroyed. They were being educated. Each defensive point became a point of transformation. Weapon systems dissolved, then reformed into communication matrices. Defensive grids became living neural networks that pulsed with an intelligence beyond mechanical understanding. The very concept of conflict was being rewritten at a fundamental level. Chen's quantum presence continued its impossible dialogue. Technology is not a weapon. The transmission read, existing simultaneously in every known communication protocol, and several that had never existed before. It is a conversation. Star systems that had prepared for centuries of potential conflict found themselves facing something entirely unexpected. Not an invasion, not a conquest, a fundamental reimagining of technological interaction. The Galactic Confederation's most sophisticated analytical matrices worked frantically, trying to understand. But understanding required a complete restructuring of their own fundamental communication protocols. In the darkness between star systems, something new was emerging. A living, breathing technological ecosystem that moved beyond conflict, beyond conquest, beyond anything they had ever imagined. And it was unmistakably, irrevocably human. The confrontation was over before it had truly begun. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez stood at the edge of reality, a quantum observation point that existed between potential states. Around him, the fabric of galactic technological infrastructure pulsed with a new kind of consciousness. The aftermath was not a landscape of destruction. It was a garden of unprecedented potential. Alien civilizations that had once mocked humanity now studied their every technological whisper with a reverence bordering on religious devotion. The transformation was complete, yet it was still beginning. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had fundamentally reimagined it. Quantum communication networks that had taken millennia to develop now existed as living, breathing ecosystems. Technologies that were once rigid and predictable had become adaptive, almost sentient. The line between technological system and living organism had been irreversibly blurred. "We are not conquerors," Rodriguez whispered to the quantum matrix surrounding him. "We are architects of possibility." The Galactic Confederation, once a rigid structure of technological hierarchies, had dissolved and reformed into something entirely new. Communication was no longer about transmission. It was about conversation, about evolution, about potential. Scattered across multiple star systems, human research teams continued their work, not as military strategists, not as conquerors, but as gardeners of technological potential. Captain Area Chen's quantum presence continued to move through communication networks. She was both everywhere and nowhere, a living algorithm that represented humanity's fundamental approach to technological interaction. Where other species saw boundaries, humans saw conversations waiting to happen. The most sophisticated analytical matrices of alien civilizations worked tirelessly to understand what had occurred. But understanding required a complete restructuring of their own fundamental communication protocols. Humanity had discovered something profound. Technology was not a tool to be wielded, but a living ecosystem to be cultivated. Entire star systems found their technological infrastructures transformed. Navigation systems developed predictive capabilities that defied known physics. Communication networks became living, adaptive entities. Energy transfer systems rewrote themselves with an efficiency that made previous technological paradigms look like primitive cave drawings. The silent revolution was not about control. It was about potential. Dr. Elena Nakamura's quantum cascade had been more than a weapon. It was a conversation, a fundamental reimagining of technological interaction that spread like a living, breathing intelligence through the galaxy's communication networks. Counselor Zartek, whose crystalline body had once been a symbol of technological rigidity, now understood. The fractures in his form were not destruction. They were evolution. In research facilities hidden between star systems, human scientists continued their work, not with weapons, not with invasion strategies, but with a profound understanding that technology was a living language waiting to be understood. The galaxy watched and listened, and something new continued to emerge. Unmistakably, irrevocably human.